Autumn in Philadelphia passed in the blink of an eye. Crimson leaves covered the sidewalks, cold winds slipped through the quiet streets, and Grace Miller had just finished a 12-hour night shift at the Riverside Hospital Emergency Department. The wall clock read 6 a.m. I filed my final patient report and quietly headed to the locker room where my shoes soaked from the previous night's rain were waiting. "Grace, you doing okay?" called Laura, the head nurse. As I stepped out the door, I forced a smile, lips dry. "As long as I make it to bed, I'll survive. Got any plans this weekend, staying in or heading out?" I shook my head. "My mom and sister are on vacation in Florida. I've got a mountain of laundry waiting." Laura sighed again. "Grace, do you ever actually rest?" I stayed quiet. Words were useless in my house. I was the one who carried everything: dinners, bills, cleaning. No one asked me to, but if I didn't do it, no one else would care. The bus ride back to my worn-down apartment in West Oak Lane was freezing and nearly empty. I leaned my head against the window watching traffic build on the opposite side. My one-bedroom place wasn't much, but it was always clean. I liked keeping things in order, maybe because nothing ever stayed tidy at Mom's, where clutter mixed with my sister's laughter and Mom's constant complaining. On my fridge door, I still kept a few old postcards from my dad, Robert Miller, CEO of a trading firm. He'd traveled year-round Tokyo, Berlin, and most recently Vancouver, but he always sent a few lines asking about my job, my health, my dreams. When I dropped out of business school to become a nurse, he was the only one who supported me. Mom just sighed and called it a mediocre profession. The phone rang while I was pouring coffee. It was Mom. "Grace, don't forget we've got dinner at the house tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Claire's boyfriend is coming. I want everything clean and the food perfect." I looked up at the ceiling as if hoping the universe would send down some patience. "Aren't you in Florida?" "Yeah, but Claire and I are flying back tomorrow morning. I booked the flights last minute. His schedule just worked out. You'll handle everything okay? Just make the dishes Claire likes." I gripped my coffee cup tighter. "All right. I'll take care of it, Grace. I can always count on you. You're grown now and a nurse. None of this should be a big deal." She hung up like she'd just given instructions to an assistant. Claire, my younger sister, had just completed an interior design certification, pretty polished and always the center of attention in Mom's eyes. Claire was the golden child in me. I pulled 12-hour shifts saving lives and still lived in the shadows. The phone rang again, a video call from Dad. "Hey there, my strong girl, how are things?" I smiled. "Where are you, Dad?" "Vancouver. The project's more complicated than I thought, so I'll have to stay a few more weeks. Sorry if I don't make it back for your birthday." "It's okay, I understand, but Grace, if anything happens, call me anytime." "All right." I gave a slight tilt of my head, sensing he already knew something was wrong. "I will take care of yourself and look after your mom and Claire for me. That place would fall apart without you." I chuckled quietly. His joke felt like a warm pat on the back from across the country. After the call, I sat by the rain speckled window holding my cup. I'd grown used to being the one backstage holding things together, but something inside me stirred, a flicker beneath the ashes. I woke up Saturday morning as sunlight crept through the blinds, though it felt like I hadn't slept at all. The first text on my phone was from Mom. "Claire says her boyfriend likes smoked salmon. Make it look nice, and don't forget to swap out the tablecloth. The old one looks cheap." Below it, a heart emoji, as if that made the whole list of orders more pleasant. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before setting it down. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but the rest, the part trained to obey, got up and started mentally drafting a grocery list as I pushed my cart through the crowded supermarket. Claire called. "Grace, can you get a bottle of organic red wine? Don't get the cheap stuff, Jeff's picky." I hesitated for a moment. She said, "Can you?" But we both knew it was just a polite way of saying, "You have to." While I was calculating whether that bottle fit my budget, she added, "Oh, and if there are white tulips, grab some. Mom says Jeff's dad likes minimalist style." I stopped in the wine aisle, fingers hovering over the least expensive label that still looked presentable. It felt like I was prepping for a fancy dinner party, one where I Wasn't even on the guest list that afternoon. I arrived at Mom's and dove into cleaning the floors, polishing windows, prepping ingredients. The kitchen was hot, my hair clung to my neck and the clock ticked faster than usual. Mom and Claire still weren't back from the airport, but the messages kept rolling in. Grace, make sure there are no onions in the salad. Jeff, slightly allergic. Rinse the wine glasses too, they looked cloudy. Last time I read them over and over like exam instructions. By 4 p.m. everything was in place. The kitchen sparkled, the table was beautifully set. I sat for a moment, sweat on my forehead, strands of hair falling loose. No one saw, no one asked. Half an hour later the door burst open. Claire walked in wearing a tight dress, dragging a suitcase. Mom followed her, perfume flooding the room. Neither said, "Thanks for setting this up," or, "It looks great." Mom just scanned the table and said, "Well, acceptable, but what's with the napkin folds? They look sloppy." Claire peered into the salad bowl and frowned. "Wait, no risotto Jeff said he was craving it." I looked at her, keeping my voice even. "You didn't say I had to make that," Claire pouted and turned to Mom. "She always has to do things her way." I swallowed my response like I had so many times before. I just listened as Mom replied, "Grace, Claire is still building her future. You're already stable. Helping out a little isn't a big deal, is it?" Stable. That's what they always said about me, as if having a job and a steady income meant I was automatically responsible for carrying the rest of their lives. Dinner ended a little after 8 p.m. Jeff left. Claire saw him to the gate with an exaggerated smile. Mom sat on the sofa, scrolling on her phone with her legs crossed. I quietly cleared the table, washed the messy stack of dishes while listening to their cheerful chatter behind me. As I placed the last glass on the rack, my hand slid across a chipped edge. It sliced my finger. A thin trail of blood ran down into the sink. I stood still, the cool sting on my hand somehow clearer than the tangled mess in my head. Behind me, Mom's voice called out, "Don't forget to wipe the window glass tomorrow." "Sweetie, there's a smudge. It looks tacky." I didn't bother answering. I just rinsed the blood off in silence, applied a bandage, and quietly walked upstairs to my old room. I didn't turn on the light. I sat down on the edge of the bed, leaning against the wall. The light from the hallway spilled in just enough to show my tightly clenched hand. I wasn't waiting for anyone to ask if I was okay. The only thing I longed for was a quiet place somewhere kindness wasn't drained. In the name of family. That Sunday, Philadelphia was drenched in an unannounced rain. It poured from morning to night, each drop hitting the pavement like a quiet warning. I picked up a surprise night shift after a coworker's child came down with a fever. I was tired truly, but I still said yes. At the hospital, at least I felt like I mattered. Close to 7 a.m. I left Riverside Hospital. The streets were wet. Red traffic lights smeared in the rain. I wrapped my scarf tighter, pulled my coat up to my chin, and just hoped for a deep sleep when I got home. But as I crossed Broad Street, just 4 blocks from my house, the headlights from a truck to my left suddenly cut across. The screech of brakes, the crash felt like the sky falling, and then darkness. Riverside Hospital was already crowded by early Monday. Dr. Melinda Roberts, head of emergency, had just started her shift when the alarm blared. Female, 28, multiple trauma victim of traffic collision, deep coma. When the gurney rolled in, a nurse gasped, horrified. "It's Grace, Nurse Gay Miller." My face was swollen and bruised, blood streaming from my forehead to my cheek, clothes with mud shards of windshield glass embedded in my shoulder and arm. A staff file was pulled in a rush, and the emergency contact was found. Malene Miller. "Mother, call her now." Dr. Roberts ordered. The phone rang several times before a tired, distracted voice answered. "Hello, this is Malene Miller. I'm calling from Riverside Hospital. Your daughter Grace was in a serious accident and is currently in emergency care." There was an abnormal silence. "Why are you calling at this hour?" Madeleine said irritably. "I'm on my way to Claire's spa appointment. It's urgent. Tell Grace she's an adult. I'm sure she can handle it." "Ma'am, Grace is in a coma with internal bleeding and multiple severe injuries. We need a family member here immediately." "How inconvenient," came a long sigh. "I can't cancel this morning's plans. Claire's dog is in a pet spa and we have to pick him up. Maybe I'll stop by this afternoon." The call ended in stunned silence from the ER team Dr. Roberts looked up. No one's coming, she whispered to herself, then quickly composed herself. Focus on saving her right now. We're her family. The surgery lasted 6 hours. My abdomen was filled with blood, my liver was torn, my femur broken, and early signs of brain swelling appeared. The body I once relied on to care for others now lay cold and broken on the operating table, being fought for by the same hands I'd once worked beside. After the surgery I was moved to ICU. The ventilator hummed beside me, my heart rate flickered. No relatives waited in the hall. At 11 a.m. Dr. Roberts tried calling again. This time Meline's voice came from what was clearly a nail salon. I know, don't worry, Grace is strong, she's a nurse, surely she knows how to get through this, ma'am. Your daughter doesn't need encouragement, she needs her mother now. You don't understand. Meline's voice lowered. If I cancel today's treatment, Claire will be upset. She's had this appointment booked all week. Dr. Roberts's tone hardened. And if you don't come now, there may not be another chance to say anything to your daughter. Silence. Then the line disconnected. Night fell in the ICU. Only the cold, sterile light remained. No family footsteps, no hand to hold mine. Only Jennifer, a coworker from my shift, sat quietly by my bed holding my hand for hours. Grace, if you can hear me, don't give up. Everyone here is waiting for you. She wiped my forehead with a warm towel and placed a small stuffed bunny beside me, the same one I'd had on my backpack since my first day on the job. She didn't say much, but her presence, quiet, steady, was the only thing I had left between life and death. I didn't wake on the first day or the second, but I knew this. Since the moment that truck barreled toward me, everything in my life had changed. And if I ever woke up, there would be no going back to the way things were. Only one question echoed in the depths of my mind: did anyone truly care? Or was I just the one keeping the family wheel turning until it crushed me under its weight? I couldn't recall exactly when I started breathing again with my own lungs, just a blur of white from the ICU ceiling and the dull beeping of the heart monitor. Every beep reminded me I was still here, floating between life and some unnamed darkness. The first day passed, not a single family member came. The second day, still no one. Meanwhile, Jennifer, an old coworker, had practically moved into the ICU. She used every break between shifts to sit beside me, sometimes just to gently smooth my hand or pull the blanket back over my shoulder. Dr. Roberts stopped by occasionally, not only to check my vitals but to whisper with a fragile hope, Grace, if you can hear me, try to move your finger, okay? I couldn't move, but I could hear them, the worried voices, the soft pleading words telling me not to give up. On the morning of the third day, the hospital's social worker tried calling my mother again. Meline, the response was exactly the same as the day before. I think Grace is fine. You nurses always act like someone's dying just to call the family. Ma'am, she hasn't opened her eyes, and we can't proceed with additional surgery unless a family member signs consent, then postpone it. I'm busy taking Claire to her dress fitting. The call ended and the doctors quietly continued treatment because none of them could bear to watch a young colleague be abandoned in critical condition. On the fifth day, I blinked for the first time, slowly, weakly, but enough for Jennifer to burst into tears. Grace, if you can hear me, just squeeze my hand, please. I tried, and my finger curled barely. She clutched my hand like it was a miracle. By the seventh day, when I opened my eyes fully, the first question I asked without sound, just through my gaze, was, where is my father? No one had an answer. Jennifer said my dad, Robert Miller, still hadn't reached out. His number wasn't listed as an emergency contact, only my mother's and Claire's. You didn't list your dad in the file? Jennifer frowned. When I tried looking him up, the only thing I found was the company address in Vancouver, but when you're fully awake we'll find him. I nodded barely, but inside something cracked. My father, the one who used to call me every week, hadn't made a single attempt to reach me while I was trapped between life and death. Unbelievable. On the morning of the 8th day, my mom and Claire showed up unannounced. They brought 2 branded shopping bags with tags still attached and faces exhausted from staying up late watching an online fashion show in New York. Is she awake yet? Claire asked without looking at me. Not fully, Jennifer replied, her voice colder than usual. We're only staying 10 minutes. My mother added, Claire has dinner plans with her boyfriend. She still needs to get her makeup done. They put on protective gowns and entered the ICU room like they were visiting a distant acquaintance. Claire wrinkled her nose at the antiseptic smell. My mother stood at the foot of the bed, keeping a precise distance as if illness was contagious. "Grace, you need to get better soon," my mother said flatly. "Don't stress Claire out." Claire leaned in and whispered, "Don't say anything to Dad, okay? If he finds out, he'll delay the whole project." Jennifer stood in the corner silently watching. She didn't say a word, just placed her hand gently on my shoulder, a quiet vow, "You are not alone." Less than 15 minutes later they were gone, gowns barely unbuttoned, heels clicking sharply down the hallway. I didn't turn my head to watch. Only when the door closed did I slowly shut my eyes. I lay there surrounded by blinking machines and stark white curtains. Jennifer and the nurses took turns through the shifts she stayed through. Breaks sometimes longer than allowed. My thoughts started to drift back. The last time I'd spoken with Dad was 3 weeks ago. He said he was still in Vancouver and the project might run longer than expected, but if anything happened to me he'd fly back immediately. So why hadn't there been a single message? I turned my head slightly, trying to catch Jennifer's gaze. "You want to find your dad, don't you?" she asked softly. Then reached for a notepad and pen. I nodded slowly. Every movement felt heavy, like my body still couldn't accept the fact that my father hadn't come. Jennifer placed the pen in my hand. I strained, then wrote, "Hold my father's company." "Okay, I'll try everything." It took Jennifer nearly half a day to track down the email of the executive assistant at the company where my dad, Robert Miller, worked. Her name was Lorraine. She sounded polished on the phone, but when Jennifer said my name there was a pause. "Grace Miller, she's Mr. Miller's daughter." Then she fell silent. "I'm sorry, I thought he already knew." "He doesn't know anything," Jennifer replied, "and Grace just survived a major accident. If he hasn't been informed, then who blocked it?" Lorraine didn't answer right away, but less than 2 hours later the ICU phone rang. It was a call from Vancouver. My father's voice came through, panicked, hoarse. "Jennifer, how's Grace? They said she had an accident. Why didn't anyone call me?" Jennifer held the phone close to my ear. I couldn't speak, but just hearing my dad's voice made the tears come uncontrollably. That night, once the doctors confirmed I was alert enough to leave the ICU, Jennifer handed me a temporary cell phone. My father called almost immediately. "Grace, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Your mother only said you had a mild flu and had to take time off work. If I had known." I gripped the phone tightly, my voice barely a whisper. "Where are you right now?" "I'm still in the US. Sweetheart, Chicago. The Vancouver project ended over 2 weeks ago. I'm just consulting remotely now, waiting to fly back to Philadelphia next week." My throat tightened. So my mother had lied, not just a harmless omission but deliberate concealment. And for what reason? I requested early discharge with the condition that medical staff would be on standby. Jennifer offered to care for me at her own home. I refused to go back to my mother's house. On the 3rd night after discharge, I asked Jennifer to take me back to the old house. I said I forgot some paperwork, but deep down I had a strange gut feeling that I needed to return, not to ask questions but to listen. I arrived around 8:30 p.m. The lights on the ground floor were still on. I used my old key. My mother never changed it and slipped in through the back door quietly like an uninvited guest. I didn't turn on the lights or speak. I just moved slowly toward the living room. Voices carried clearly. My mother, Meline, and a man. "You need to be careful. Robert still doesn't know. If he starts suspecting us, it's over. You've been lying for over 15 years. What are you so worried about?" The man's voice belonged to Joseph, an old family friend, once my father's co-worker. I stood behind the doorframe, my heart pounding so loud it felt audible through my skin. My mother went on, "I told Robert Grace had the flu and that girl is too obedient to question it. She truly believes her father's all the way in Vancouver when he's really just in Chicago." "What about Claire?" Joseph asked. "He's clueless, bless her heart, but we still have to keep things quiet. Especially about her biological father." I nearly stopped breathing. Something inside me tore a deep cold gash. "Robert isn't Claire's father." My Mother continued, you know that, but if he finds out everything will fall apart. Inside, wine glasses clinked together outside my heart. Splintered, I couldn't listen any longer, my hands trembling, I pulled out my phone and hit record, capturing the last part of the conversation. I needed proof, not just for me but for Dad. I left that house without anyone noticing, but from that moment I knew everything I once called family had been one long exhausting performance. It took me nearly 2 days to pull everything together. First, the audio recording my mother and Joseph's conversation that night. Their voices were crystal clear, every word cut through the illusion of family they'd built for decades. Next, the emails. Jennifer helped me recover a string of messages sent from my mother's personal account to a hidden address she used for Joseph. The emails didn't just confirm a 20-year affair, they exposed her fear of being discovered by Robert, my father. One of them read, "Don't worry, Robert still thinks Claire is his biological daughter. If the truth comes out, you know who will lose everything." Finally, I quietly asked Jennifer to help me reach out to a private lab in Boston. She assisted me in collecting an old hair strand from Claire left on a brush in the bathroom and a cotton pad my dad had used the last time he visited months ago. The DNA results came back in 3 days with one cold, bold sentence: eternity probability 0%. I stared at that sentence for a long time. What I felt wasn't shock, but confirmation, that gut instinct I'd had since childhood, when my father quietly supported me with unshakable trust, and my mother snapped any time I tried to share anything with him, had never been wrong. That evening I placed everything into a large envelope, a copy of the audio file, the email evidence with the PDF of the DNA results, and a handwritten letter I wrote in my own handwriting, slightly shaky but firm, to Dad. I hope you're somewhere quiet when you read this. 2 weeks ago I nearly died, and during all that time the only person I wished would call was you, but I waited and you never did because Mom lied. She told the hospital I just had a mild flu, told you that you were on a 3-month assignment in Vancouver when in reality you were just in Chicago, a short flight away. I don't even know who to be mad at, first myself for trusting too much, or them for hiding everything so well, but in the end what I need to do isn't to place blame, it's to give you the truth, all of it. You don't have to believe me, just listen to the recording on the USB, read the attached emails, and if you're brave enough, open the DNA results. I'm sorry you had to learn everything this way, but I don't think I have time to stay silent anymore. If you feel pain, please know I've lived with that pain nearly all my life. Grace. I sent the package via same-day express mail address directly to Robert Miller at his main office in Chicago. Jennifer stood beside me as I signed the delivery slip, her gaze gentle but full of concern. Are you sure? I nodded. From the moment you helped me find Dad's secretary, there's been no turning back. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my graduation day, when Mom left halfway through for Claire's design school fashion show, when Dad stayed behind taking photos with me all the way to the end, even though he had an early flight the next morning. I thought about every holiday, every postcard he sent, while Mom always said he's just putting on a show. I believed her, I believed Claire, I believed in what we called a family, and now I don't believe in any of them anymore. I just hope my father believes in me. Robert Miller received the package late Tuesday afternoon at his temporary downtown Chicago office. At first he thought it was a file from an East Coast partner, but when he saw the familiar handwriting on the sender line, Grace M., his hand froze on the envelope. A wave of unease washed over him. The first line of the letter tightened his chest. I nearly died 2 weeks ago. He read each line slowly, as if reading too fast might make him miss something vital. The farther he read, the more his hands trembled, until the USB slipped from his fingers without him noticing. Audio emails, DNA results. Grace's full letter, part confession, part apology, but both sides cut so deeply he couldn't breathe through a full inhale. Now he felt like the last one to realize he'd been deceived by the woman who once shared his bed. Close to midnight he booked the earliest flight back to Philadelphia. 24 hours later a taxi stopped in front of Riverside Hospital. My father stepped out in a dark suit, carrying no luggage, only a leather briefcase and the look of a man who would accept no more lies. The front desk confirmed that Grace had been discharged and was currently staying at a private residence under the care of a coworker named Jennifer Foster. She's awake? He asked, his voice low and hoarse. Yes, sir. She's recovering faster than expected, but you should know. She didn't want to return to her old home. Robert bowed his head in thanks. He saved Jennifer's address in his phone but didn't head there just yet. Before seeing his daughter, he had one stop left to make the place he believed was home for 28 years. The house sat peacefully on a tree in street. Autumn leaves covered the front steps. The white door opened before Robert even rang the bell. Robert Meline blinked, startled, still holding a crystal glass of juice. Why are you back early? I thought you were in Chicago until the weekend. I changed my flight after reading Grace's letter, he replied. I want an explanation. Meline froze. Claire, sitting on the living room floor with her laptop, scrambled to her feet. What's going on, Mom? Robert stepped inside, scanning the familiar room like he was tracing every crack in a crumbling wall. He pulled an envelope from his briefcase and set it on the table. Inside is everything I need: the recording of you and Joseph, the emails, and Claire's DNA results. Claire staggered as if someone had shoved her hard from behind. What? Claire? He turned to the girl he'd raised as his own. I don't blame you. None of this is your fault, but I have a right to know. Meline could no longer hold herself together. She set the glass down, but her hands trembled. Robert, the first I meant to tell you. I just what he cut her off. Wait another 28 years, or until I die, before you finally tell the truth. Claire choked out. You're not my dad. Robert looked at her, his eyes full of sorrow more than anger. No, and I'm sorry you had to find out like this. He turned to Meline. But what I can't forgive is that when my daughter, the only one in this house who doesn't carry a lie in her blood, nearly died, you never showed up, not once, and you kept it from me. Eyes, Robert. She collapsed into the chair. I was wrong. It wasn't just wrong, you destroyed an entire family. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. This is the divorce petition. I've already signed it. My lawyer will contact you on Monday. You're just going to abandon me and our daughter, she screamed. Robert, the first of nothing without this house that was your choice. As for me, I choose to protect Grace. He glanced at Claire one last time, his voice softening. If you ever need help, call me. He turned and walked toward the door. A strong gust of wind sent dry leaves swirling across the porch. The door shut behind him for the first time without regret. 2 weeks after my father left the old house, my mother and Claire were officially ordered to vacate the property under a temporary court ruling. They packed their things in silence, avoiding the eyes of neighbors who once praised our family as the model of the neighborhood. Just days later, Joseph Baker, the man whose name my mother used to mention in sweet tones behind my father's back, suddenly disappeared from Philadelphia. No letter, no explanation. Just one message sent to my mother: my wife found out everything, don't contact me again. The luxury apartment where they used to secretly meet was returned. The bank account my mother used to receive support from Joseph was frozen due to a divorce suit filed by his wife Meline, who once prided herself on not needing anyone's protection, now had to look for a job for the first time in nearly 30 years of being a housewife. An old acquaintance referred her to a high-end boutique downtown where she worked as a sales assistant and style advisor for wealthy women, the same type she used to dine with as a guest. The salary wasn't bad, but nowhere near enough to maintain her old lifestyle. A small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts was all she and Claire could manage after my father cut off all financial support. As for Claire, she took the DNA test results to confront Joseph, hoping for a meeting, a single word of acknowledgement, but he just looked at her and took a step back. Don't call me father, he said. You're the result of a mistake. I don't need a reminder. Claire stood frozen for the first time in her life. The girl who was once pampered and praised was treated like a stain no one wanted to remember. When she returned to the cramped apartment, she threw the envelope of test results onto the table and screamed at my mother. Why did you hide it from me? Why did you push me this far? Meline didn't answer. She just leaned against the chair, staring out the window under the eyes of someone who had lost everything. Claire was no longer a princess but a reflection of a past mistake that couldn't be erased. I didn't hear these things from them but from a former employee at the boutique where my mother worked. She was a friend of a patient I cared for at the hospital. The news didn't come to me as sweet revenge but as a reminder that consequences, however delayed, always arrive. I never wished them suffering, but I'm no longer afraid of the truth. I chose to live with it even if it cost me half my childhood. 2 months after everything, I moved in with Dad to a small apartment in West Boston near Charles Gate Park and less than a 10-minute drive from the hospital. The apartment wasn't fancy like the old house, but every corner was lovingly arranged by his own hands. We repainted the walls cream, hung old photos that Mom had hidden away, and set up a bookshelf just for me, something no one in the old house ever cared about beyond my nursing degree. Dad officially turned down an executive position in the Chicago branch to take an internal advisor role at the Boston headquarters. He told me without hesitation, jobs can change a daughter doesn't. On our first night in the new apartment, I brought out bowls of soup. Dad sat at the table, no laptop, no phone, just a notepad listing what to buy for dinner. I paused, then smiled. I'm not used to seeing you this relaxed. Well, I'm learning from scratch, he replied. Being a father isn't just about wiring money on time. I didn't say anything, just placed the best part of the soup in front of him. Jennifer still dropped by every weekend, bringing homemade waffles and endless hospital stories. Soon other coworkers started coming too. Daniel, the no-nonsense anesthesiologist who secretly loved jazz. Liz, the senior nurse who once tore me to shreds my first year, now brought fresh flowers every visit. The tiny apartment was always full of laughter. The white lab coats had become a family, not by blood but by shared pain, understanding, and care. That Christmas Eve, snow fell gently outside the window. On the table sat a bottle of red wine, almond tarts, and pumpkin soup. I learned from the head nurse. Dad wore a dark blue knit sweater, standing in the middle of the room raising his glass. Everyone fell quiet. I once thought I had a family, he said slowly, until I nearly lost the one person who truly was my family. Thank you all for standing by Grace when I couldn't, and thank you, my daughter, for teaching me this family isn't about blood, it's about truth. He raised his glass to a real family. Surreal family, I echoed. Before the night ended, I went downstairs to check the mailbox. Amidst bills and New Year postcards was an envelope with no return address, just my name in a familiar slanted script. I didn't need to open it to know who sent it. I brought it back to the apartment, laid it gently on the kitchen counter, stared at it for a few seconds, then quietly dropped it in the trash because I no longer belonged to that world. Dad saw me do it but didn't ask. He just said, tomorrow I'm thinking of adding another shelf. Want to save a spot for photos with your friends? I smiled. No shelf needed, I just want one small corner to hang one frame of the people who chose to stay outside. The snow kept falling, but inside that little room I knew I was finally having a winter where my heart wasn't cold anymore. I used to think family was something unchangeable until I nearly lost my life and realized some people share your blood but never saw you as their own. And then there are strangers who step in, take your hand, and stay when no one else does. From one accident I lost the illusion called family, but found the truth, love, and a life no longer built on playing a role. Now I don't live to be accepted, I live to be free, to be myself. What do you think about Grace's choice and the cost of a false family? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional, honest, and meaningful stories about life and